Hello and welcome to this quick overview and review of this little model here. This is the GEElang Anger 75X. It's a little Whoop style model and this is the version 2. So some of this may look a little bit familiar, but this seems to be the latest and greatest version. Available from places like Banggood, link in description, with things like compatible FlySky receivers, DSM-X, DSM-2. This one's got an XM Plus in it, and you can even get it with a TVS Crossfire receiver in here as well. Comes pretty much ready to rock and roll out the box. So while I unbox this, let me go through a couple of the specs. Now, I not only have the fully made up Anger 75X V2 Whoop, I've also got the 75mm Cyclone frame that appears to be built off on the bottom as well. And the Cyclone frame, from what I've been playing with here, actually looks quite nice. So if you maybe have already broken another Whoop style model and looking for a frame, that might be a good choice. Now you can see here mine says FR Sky XM Plus for Europe. Be aware though that this has come with FCC firmware on it, so if you want to run it and bind to it as LBT, then you're going to have to flash the receiver. Now along with the frame you get these kind of foamy bits, and then you have the frame itself, and again this is going to look very familiar in a minute, because as I take the model out, a lot of this is going to look very, very familiar indeed. Nice plastic on this. It's there's a little bit of give, but it is quite strong and tough. And one of the things you might notice is the front two motors are slightly wider apart than the back two, so it's not a true X. Wheelbase about 75mm. The size of the quad I'm about to unpack is about 106 by 98 by 53mm. Weight in the listing is 46 grams without battery and 76 grams with the 4S 2600 LiPo batteries that are in here. Now the USB cable that comes with it is really weird. It has a really long connector, and you are going to need that to connect it to the computer. There is a spare top in a slightly different colour, so it's nice to have spares in the box, and then you have the main event. Now this again is 4S 260 mAh LiPo battery. I'll talk about flight times in a minute. These red things, 3D printed things, do pop off. They seem to be just there to protect it from moving around in the actual case itself, but hopefully you can see here that this is the same frame. So the motors on here are GL1202 6900 kV models. The flight controller in here is an S4 based Maytech F11 compatible flight controller. Again, I've got mine with the XM Plus, so no telemetry back, but that'll be fine. Interestingly, in my box, I've got another 2 batteries as well, which is good. That's going to keep you flying. And there is this great little summary of how everything needs to be set up. But though, to be honest, if you bought one with a receiver in it, it's a really straightforward setup. The video transmitter is capable of 200 milliwatts, 40 channel, and the camera is a little 1/4 inch CMOS sensor camera, 800 TVL lines, 800 by 600, which is NTSC 4.3, no change available for that. So plugging it into Beast Flight via that wacky cable, and you will need that, otherwise you won't be able to reach the USB port at the side. It looks like this. Again, everything is moving, everything looks good. Beta Flight 411 and an F4 base flight controller. Ports are like this, so we just have the VTX set up for Tramp. Then the configuration, motor stops turned on, D-Shot 600, central alignment for the gyro has been altered a little bit. 8K gyro and PID loop frequency, so the CPU is running a little bit hard for an F4. S Plus receiver, all ready to go, and most of the standard things turned on. Interestingly, an air mode isn't permanently enabled, but this does have a buzzer in it, so I'm very happy with that. So make sure that you've got the buzzer set up in the modes, and I'd also set up the buzzer in here as well. Power and battery look like this. Again, I'm going to dump and diff all this stuff out into a file. Failsafe is set to drop. PID tuning looks like this. Link in the description to the dump and diff of this particular model in case you want to have a look how they've set it up. The flying characteristics are very nice. They've done a pretty good job. Receiver is set, and they have also flashed the XM Plus with the RSSI on auxiliary 12, which is great. The modes need a little bit of work, but by default it's not a bad stab. Arming is auxiliary 1, the high level, and then angle is set for the middle of the next channel. So definitely worthwhile coming in here and just playing around with a couple of stuff, making sure that you've got a beeper set so you can hear that little beeper, because this thing will disappear in grass that isn't well cut. Make sure your air mode is on. I usually have air mode set for horizon and also for rate mode. And also I'm going to keep flip over after crash on. I'll keep it on the same control that I've got the beeper set to, so that'll allow me to recover it too. On-screen display is going to need a bit of work, so come in here and move things around and set the video transmitter to whatever you want to start with. Obviously there's going to be the usual BeatsFlight on-screen display stuff in here, and because the VTX is connected via Tramp, you're going to be able to set it to whatever you want. In terms of flying, it is very fun to fly. There isn't a lot of interference on the camera or the video transmitter, and I was a little bit worried about the camera, but the camera performance is actually not bad. You can see where you're going without too much problem. It's hovering about a third throttle and easily flying around at about 33-35% throttle reasonably briskly. So there's an awful lot of power here to get in and out of trouble, but it's not as lightweight as compact to something like a Mobula 6, so you can definitely feel that extra little bit of weight and momentum when you are trying to turn quickly. In terms of the noise it makes, it isn't as noisy as some of the smaller models that I've played with recently. You don't get that same scream, although it's definitely still not stealth. In the past week while I've been flying it, I've had a couple of instances where I've had a little bit of washout on hard turns where one of the sides has dipped down. So just be careful of that. If you flip around and you're flying into your own kind of downwash, then you can get that kind of yaw washout that sometimes you can get in these smaller kind of whoop style models. So just be on your toes if you're turning around quickly to catch it if it's going to do that. Flight times from the batteries that I'm getting here, about 4 to 5 minutes. It really depends on how hard you are on them. And the other tip is definitely use linear antennas on your goggles if you're going to be flying something like this to give you the best possible experience. So in summary, what do I think? I really like it. This is very nicely built. I love the way that all the spares are in the box. So although there aren't any spares of the props, and also the props aren't held on with little screws, so they're relatively easy to pop on and off. I like the fact you've got the spare canopy, you've got the extra batteries. The box itself is a fantastic way to transport these things to stop them getting damaged as you move them around. Very easy to get to the blind button on the receiver. Really nice, thoughtful touches in the way that this model has been built. Loads of rake on the camera as well, so depending on how fast you want to fly this thing around, you have the option for lots of adjustability, and because of the space in there, if you wanted to change the camera out for something a little bit higher end, then you could do. Although the camera has been one of the pleasant surprises on this, it's actually much better than I expected. The tune on it is very nice out the gate as well. It probably could do with the rates increasing for some pilots that like to fly really quickly, and that extra bit of weight over things like the Mobula 6. If you're used to that really small kind of race car style whoops, this will feel a little bit more sedate to you. But this flies more like an Emax Tiny Hawk than anything else, and that's probably about as high a praise as I can give any of these class of models. Only a couple of things to be aware of. As I've said, there's loads of spares and extras in the box. There aren't any spare props, so be aware of that if you break anything. The XM Plus that I got, despite it saying for Europe on the case, was actually flashed with the international version of the firmware, so careful of that. You will need to make sure you don't lose the odd little USB cable that comes with it, because if you don't, you're going to have to clip plastic out of the way to get a standard USB cable into the USB slot to connect it into BeatsFlight. And don't forget, always put a linear antenna on your goggles to get the best possible signal out of a little model like this. But I've been impressed with this much more than I expected. If you're looking for a fast little whoop like this to zoom around, this is definitely worth a look. Thank you for watching my video and watching right to the very end. If you want to find out what I'm currently working on, you can follow me on social media by searching for Painless360 in the usual places. If you'd like to become part of the inner circle, then you can become a Patreon. Details are in the description and you get lots of additional benefits. Check out the playlist section on the channel too. I organise all of my videos into playlists and it's called something like Introduction to or for Beginners. All of the content is aimed so that you can start at the very beginning and it teaches you that subject, starting with simple principles and moving up to teach you everything you need to know.